Hey y'all, Nikki Brown here. No matter where you are and what part of the world you are in, I hope that you are having a good day. So, I've been saying a lot of this stuff for years, and I've had people tell me I was stupid, I was crazy, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Um, and so I kind of just started. I'm not gonna say I gave up, but I just started sharing the information or discussing the information with people who were aware of the information. And I stopped trying to tell people new information because, again, it was met with criticism. But I'm kind of tired of being quiet about it because I know a lot of information, right? Um, I've known a lot of this stuff since at least 1994. Um, my freshman year in college, not that college, is the deciding factor. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think I'm better than anybody because of that or anything. It's not about that. I'm just giving perspective. This is how long I've known some of this information. Um, and then, of course, I've learned more and more and more and more over the years. Um, and more specifically, I've learned a lot from Dane Calloway, right? And although a lot of the information that he shares I already knew, it's his perspective. It's the in-depth research that he has done. Shout out to Dane Calloway, and also shout out to Papa Duck. They've both given me the courage to do this video right now, right? So let me just kind of go back and tell the story. Um, Basically, our ancestors were here, right? And when they came here, well, we were here, we were naked, right? Because there was no such thing as shame or guilt. That Adam and Eve story, that's when the shame and the guilt started. But the colonists wrote the book, right? So prior to that, we were here and enjoying our nudity because the female body or the male body was not sexualized. It was seen as a reproductive system, right? Procreation. Um, and men did look at women, okay, her hips are wide enough to accommodate a child. But that was about the extent of it. It wasn't lustful. It wasn't infatuation. It wasn't porn like, right? It wasn't any of those things. Um, so then Columbus and his people come, right? Um, and he said things like, I recognize that they were people who would be better converted to our holy faith by love than by force. But despite some noble thoughts, um, he also said the Tainos, which is what they called the Indians they encountered at that time in that particular area, the Tainos were potential slaves or servants, right? He said they should be good and intelligent servants, for I see that they say very quickly everything that is said to them, and I believe that they would become Christians very easily, for it seemed to me that they had no religion. The explorer also saw the natives as subjects to be studied and shown off. He directed his men to round up a sampling of the population without regard for the feelings of the people involved for a voyage back to Spain. So he came in. Columbus came here several times. First time just to see what was going on, then came back with a strategy the subsequent times. So because he felt like we were a foolish and naive people, he just said, oh, let's just get some of them together and take them back to Spain without their permission. The Spanish also gave the Indians a lesson in brutality. When a group of Tainos refused to surrender their bows and arrows, the Spanish attacked, killing at least one of them. Columbus praised his men for teaching the Indians to fear the Christians. These are in Columbus's journals. This is again something else that I studied in college, and I didn't quite understand it as in depthly as I do now. When I was in college, I was like, what is going on here? What are they talking about? What? And that was circa 2009, 2010. That was somewhere around in that time frame when I was learning this information. First time I went to college, that was 1994, right? I learned about a lot of Egyptian history and a lot about religion that time around. Then I changed my major to English in I think 2010. Yeah, somewhere around in there. Here's another excerpt from Columbus's writings. As soon as I arrived in the Indies on the first island which I found, I took some of the natives by force in order that they might learn and might give me information of whatever there is in these parts. They do not bear arms and do not know them, for I showed them a sword. They took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no I can't see it. They have no iron. Their spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. Christopher Columbus's Captain's Logs, 1492. They very willingly showed my people where the water was, and they themselves carried the full barrels to the boat, and took great delight in pleasing us. They are very gentle and without knowledge of what is evil, nor do they murder or steal. There can be no better or gentler people. I assure your highness that I believe that in all the world there is no better people nor better country. And this was what Queen Ferdinand and King Ferdinand and what's her name? Isabella, that he's referring to. They love their neighbors as themselves, and they have the sweetest talk in the world, and are gentle and always laughing. Here's another writing. The strongest evidence of African presence in America before Columbus comes from the pen of Columbus himself. In 1920, a renowned American historian and linguist, Leo Weiner of Harvard University, in his book, Africa and the Discovery of America, explained how Columbus noted in his journal that Native Americans had confirmed that black-skinned people had come from the southeast in boats trading in gold-tipped spears. Egyptian artifacts found across North America from the Algonquin writings. Algonquins were an Indian tribe, an American Indian tribe. Writings on the East Coast to the artifacts in Egyptian place names in the Grand Canyon. Let me read that again. Egyptian artifacts found across North America from the Algonquin writings on the East Coast to the artifacts in Egyptian place names in the Grand Canyon. That means on temples and in caves in the United States. In 1311 AD, another major wave of African explorer to the New World was led by King Abubakar II, the ruler of the 14th century Mali Empire, which was larger than the Holy Roman Empire. The king sent out 200 ships of men and 200 ships of trade material, crops, animals, cloth, and crucially African knowledge of astronomy, religion, and the arts. Olmecs are perhaps best known for the carved colossal heads found in central Mexico that exhibit an unmistakably African Negroid appearance. Ancient African historian Professor Van Sertima has illustrated how Olmecs were the first Mesoamerican civilization to use a written language, sophisticated astronomy, arts, and the mathematics, and they built the first cities in Mexico, all of which greatly influenced the Mayans and subsequent civilizations in the Americas. There is not the slightest doubt that all later civilizations in Mexico and Central America rest ultimately on an Olmec base. Once remarked Michael Cole, a leading historian on Mexico. Africans clearly played an intricate role in the Olmec Empire's rise, and that African influence peaked during the same period that ancient Black Egyptian culture ascended in Africa. So these things were going on simultaneously. So that means these people were already here. They were already here. There are mounds here in the United States. There's writings and carvings here in caves in the United States of America. Okay? I'm saying it like that because I'm trying to make sure that what I'm saying is being understood. I'm not trying to be funny. Please understand what is being said. There may be some people who they're not, I just want to make sure everybody's getting this. Here's another excerpt from Columbus. All of them go around as naked as their mothers bore them, and the women also, although I did not see more than one quite young girl. And all those that I saw were young people, for none did I see of more than 30 years of age. Excuse me. They are very well formed, with handsome bodies and good faces. Their hair coarse, almost like the tail of a horse, and short. They wear their hair down over their eyebrows, except for a little in the back, which they wear long and never cut. Some of them paint themselves with black, and they are the color of the Canarians, neither black nor white. And some of them paint themselves with white, and some of them with red, and some of them with whatever they find. And some of them paint their faces, and some of them the whole body, and some of them only the eyes, and some of them only the nose. Columbus was also concerned about converting the Tainos to Christianity. What does this mean? This means that some of them were brown skinned. They even show you a picture. So this would be what one of the men would look like. A Taino man. An Indian Taino man. A Taino Indian man. Pre-Christianity in the United States in America, in the Americas. They walked around nude, but they would wear body paint. Their hair was coarse. They were handsome. They had good faces, right? Canarians are brown. Maybe not what they show us in pictures, but brown people. Okay? Again, here's more. There is evidence that when Christopher Columbus got to America, he discovered the copper-colored races. Let me get a penny. I do have some copper, but I'm gonna get a penny. Oh, here's some copper here. Here's some copper here. Here's some copper. Who would be considered copper colored? Who would be considered copper colored? Who's copper colored? Let me continue reading. Christopher Columbus also thought he was in India. What's the complexion of a lot of Indian people? Brown. Brown. So he encountered brown-skinned people when he came to the Americas with coarse hair. Christopher Columbus, this says Christopher Columbus did not discover America as the continent was already inhabited. Here's more. Christopher Columbus letters, 1493. As far as I have learned, every man throughout these islands is united but to one wife, with the exception of the kings and princes, who are allowed to have 20. The women seem to work more than the men. This means that polygamy did exist, but it was for wealthy people. I've said that before. The average person was not in a polygamous relationship because they could not afford to be. Because you have to be able to afford each woman and each child you have with that woman. The women did the work around the house, right? And they needed those kids to help tend to the land. And of course, if you're a royalty, they don't usually do any type of work. They usually have domestics who do the work. And so to a certain extent, some of those women would have been considered domestics. But then the men would have been out perhaps hunting or protecting the land. Because there were tribes, right? Clans. Let's hear more about what Columbus had to say. Some of this stuff I may repeat, but this provides a little bit more detail, right? Again, letter from Christopher Columbus, 1493. The inhabitants of both sexes in this island and in all others which I have seen or which I have received information go always naked as they were born, with the exception of some of the women who use the covering of a leaf, a small bow, or an apron of cotton which they prepare for that purpose. None of them, as I have already said, are possessed of iron, neither have they weapons, being unacquainted with, and indeed incompetent to use them, not from any deformity of body, for they are well formed, but because they are timid and full of fear. They carry, however, in lieu of arms, canes dried in the sun, on the ends of which they fix heads of dried wood sharpened to a point. And even these they dare not use habitually, for it has often occurred when I have sent 2 or 3 of my men to any of the villages to speak with the natives, that they have come out in a disorderly troop and have fled in such haste at the approach of our men, that the fathers forsook their children, and the children their fathers. This timidity did not arise from any loss or injury that they had received from us. On the contrary, I gave to all I approached whatever articles I had about me, such as cloth and many other things, taking nothing of theirs in return. But they are naturally timid and fearful. As soon, however, as they see that they are safe and have laid aside all fear, they are very simple and honest, and exceedingly liberal with all they have, none of them refusing anything he may possess when he is asked for it, but on the contrary, inviting us to ask them. They exhibit great love towards all others in preference to themselves. They also give objects of great value for trifles, and content themselves with very little or nothing in return. However, forbade that these trifles and articles of no value, such as a piece of dishes, plates, and glass, keys, and leather straps, should be given to them, although if they could obtain them, they imagine themselves to be possessed of the most beautiful trinkets in the world. There's one more I want to read, and then I think I'm going to be done with that. Okay. Columbus did describe some of the natives as having straight hair. Um, Amazing fact about the Negro, number 76. What's the truth behind the legend in many African American families about having a Native American ancestor? Zora Neale Hurston once wrote with characteristic irony that she thought she was the only Negro in the United States whose grandfather on the mother's side was not an Indian chief. Like most African Americans I've interviewed, I was raised believing that one of my great great grandparents was all or part Native American with high cheekbones and straight black hair. So, Hold on, y'all. Sorry. I don't want to keep you waiting, but in one excerpt, Columbus mentioned coarse hair, and then in another one, he mentioned straight hair. So I was trying to find the one where he mentioned straight hair. But I can't seem to find it right this second. So, um, okay, I'm not gonna keep looking for it. So, okay, so again, when Columbus came here, our ancestors were already here, right? And we roamed around the land, but we didn't consider ourselves owning the land. Like, we considered this land to belong to the Most High, and we had the pleasure of being able to inhabit it, right? And we took care of the land. We treated the animals and the bugs with respect, right? Land ownership is something that's a Caucasian or European concept, because when they came here, they saw the land and the women as something to be conquered and walked on. They saw us in general, like the men are weak, they're not going to do anything. He said it. I read to you what he said. These are Columbus's journals. You can probably find them in various anthologies, um, or various other books where you can find Columbus's excerpts and the excerpts of other explorers who wrote in journals of what they saw when they came here. They talked about how beautiful the land was and all of these different things, right? So, one of the things that um, hold on. I can't think of his name right now. Give me a second. He wrote Black Power, White Wealth. And I have this book, Claude Anderson, right? Claude Anderson said, so again, when Columbus came here, we were considered Indians, right? Or Aborigines. Malcolm X mentioned that, or American Indians, right? Since they decided to call it America. Um, Negro, Moor, all those things came after. So at a certain point, they said, okay, well, we'll give you civil rights. What nation is civil? Where does that nation exist? There's no such nation called civil. And I've often asked this question and no one can seem to answer it for me. How can you be African and American at the same time? Black and white are colors. And really, if you look at a rainbow, they do not exist within the color spectrum. Even when you study like physics, the laws of physics, I think, or anything that has to do with the color spectrum, radio waves, and all of this other kind of science that has been studied, black and white don't exist. Brown isn't even really on the color spectrum, right? So when we call ourselves these things, what are we really saying? I've asked this question again. People get mad at me. And again, they tell me that I'm crazy or that I'm stupid and don't know what I'm talking about. So who's civil? That's what Claude Anderson says. Who is civil? To the point where she gets rights. And then those rights now go to the homosexual community, the Asian community, this community, that community, and it's still not coming back to the people whose ancestors were already here. Because we're calling ourselves something that doesn't exist. So why are you owed reparations if you don't exist? Pardon me if you heard that. Okay. It's part of life. I'm not editing it out either. Right? Shout out to Ann Coulter too on ABC News. This Week is the name of the show. And the segment was on race and politics. She said, why are these other groups getting, money, and the people who were, treated the most, the worst, aren't getting anything, right? So shout out to her. After so-called slavery, right, which when a lot of these immigrants came here, they were criminals in Europe, right? So they were kind of sit here and pardoned to a certain extent. But they still had to pay off their indentured servitude. So they had to come here and work. And we worked alongside each other. Until at a certain point, 14th Amendment, when the 13th Amendment was reduced from 20 sections to 3, right? It went from 20 sections to 3 sections. And then the 14th Amendment was added. And so-called white nationality became a thing. So then the mentality was to separate us. Why? Because we had our own land, we had our businesses. We were Rosewood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Newark, New Jersey, Harlem, all of these places that we were doing well. We had businesses, we were going to school, we owned land, we had everything. We had our own everything. Then all of a sudden they said, oh, you're in the Great Depression too. Burnt down all of our stuff and said, oh, well, since you don't have anything anymore, you can just come work for us. And we've been working for them ever since. Both white and black. Instead of alongside each other. Because once those Europeans came here as immigrants, they paid off their indentured servitude. So they technically should have been set free. Not free to go work for somebody, though. Free to do whatever they wanted to do. Then you had another set of immigrants who they took the land from the people who were already here and gave it to the newcoming immigrants that showed up. That's one of the things Martin Luther King talked about. before he left here. And people don't say, some people know about some of this stuff, but just too afraid to say anything, right? So, yeah, historically we had our own lands, banks, farms, businesses, everything. We were doing well. We weren't in the Great Depression with them. But they started hating on us. They started hating on us. And the president was like, what are they doing over there? Oh, no, that's not. So they called it the Great Reset. That's also around the time when the KKK was created. And then you had the black codes or the black laws and Jim Crow and all of this other, all these other things to prevent us from doing well. And yes, you can still do well. This is not about blame. I'm not saying, I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just pointing out some of the situations and circumstances that did occur. Right? That you can go look up the 13th and 14th Amendment. You can go do your own research about the Great Depression. You can go do your own research about Reconstruction, because we were doing well during Reconstruction, right? Sync up those years. When did all those riots happen? When all those mobs burned down all those major cities like Newark. It wasn't just Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was not just Tulsa. It was predominantly black cities all across the United States. Reconstruction era followed the American Civil War, right? We were politicians, all kinds of stuff, right? Look up John Hanson. Who was he? Look at the back of the $2 bill, right? Who's the black guy? Who's that guy? That one dark face in the room. Who's he? So the 14th Amendment made so-called whites or Caucasians or immigrants first-class citizens. And they made them feel superior and as if they were better. Not better than the ones that are in charge and in control, but at least better than the people that they used to work alongside. Just based sheerly on difference. So because those people are different from you, that means you're better. Is what they were basically told. You're better because they're different. So racism exists because of difference. And we still discriminate based on difference, right? Short, tall, fat, skinny, old, young. We still do that. And then some people go to church, right? How can you discriminate against somebody and then think it's okay just because you went to church? I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just asking a question because that's not right. That's not how this works. That's not how that's supposed to work. Right? That's not how that's supposed to work. That is not how that is supposed to work. As gentle as kind, and I'm not saying to be naive, but as gentle and kind as Columbus described the people who were here before he came, that's what Christianity, so-called Christianity, is supposed to look like. Then you had the Puritans. They were some of the Europeans who came over here, right? Very industrious. Um, they made everything, their houses, their clothes, and they were patriarchal, right? But for the most part, our ancestors were matriarchal. But the Europeans didn't like matriarchal societies because the men wanted to be dominant and in control. Again, they saw women and land as something to be conquered and walked on. This is why you have people from the nation of gods and earths, also known as 5%ers, who call women earth, and they think that that is acceptable. But for me to say that, right? I had this discussion with somebody around 2005 or so. He told me I was wrong. Okay, if you say so. But I'm not. The European considered women as something to be walked on and conquered. And so again, they have instilled that mentality into a lot of men in various societies to make them feel like they're more dominant than women when it should not be like that. If anything, we should work alongside one another. It doesn't matter who makes more, does more. Those things really don't matter and should not matter. Again, that's a difference. It's about how can you come together and build together. What can you build together with the knowledge and strength that you both have? Because everybody has strengths and weaknesses. But I don't know what I'm talking about, right? I'm stupid and crazy. I know. The men wanted to dominate, and pretty much they still do. And they took the women out of everything, including the Bible, right? And they made the women Jezebels and harlots for the most part. And said Mary had a baby without, the assistance of a man. I guess she used her Bartholin gland, right? Never before or never after has that happened, but it happened with that one woman. I got a bridge to sell you. Puritan men believed they were the stronger gender. Again, our ancestors were predominantly matriarchal and had a different mindset. So, one of the reasons this came up, because I was watching Dane Calloway. The Biden administration, let me read this first. White House considering payments of $450,000 per person to immigrant families separated at the border. This was an article in the New York Post on October 28th, 2021 by Samuel Chamberlain. Word. Wait a minute. Let me figure out which way to do this so my back don't scream at me. So the immigrants back in the day got the land, right? And historically, over the years, other immigrants have gotten money, right? Now, the immigrants entering now, because they were separated from their children, are going to get potentially get $450,000 per person. This is a consideration. So that means it's in the budget, right? But then they tell other people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And we have the nerve to judge and criticize one another, right? And say that this person should be doing this or doing that. But they can give $450,000 per person to immigrants because they were separated from their children. This is Biden now. The Biden administration is correct to provide relief to the children and families affected by the government's horrific practice of family separation. Word is bond. Real talk. ACLU attorney Lee Gallant said in a statement, their suffering is something they will always live with, and it is a deep moral stain on our country. We need to make it right, and this includes not simply any monetary support, but also a path to remain here. This is what is right and fair. I want to curse right now and spit. If this makes sense to you, let me know what you think. Leave it in the comments. So let's do a recap. We were here roaming the earth freely. We had options. You can walk up to a tree, pull a piece of fruit off and eat it. We had beautiful, pretty flowers. The earth was clean. The people were lovely, a pleasure to look at. Then Columbus came and said they stupid and naive and they don't have no weapons, so we could get about 50 people together and conquer them. So they came here with gifts to manipulate us with, and they left with some people, and then they went back and forth. And then the next thing you know, the smallpox blankets and a whole bunch of people passed away. Like mass genocide, like something else we've heard about in history, where people have gotten reparations for it. Other nationalities, right? The land that, again, we didn't own the land. It's the Creator's land, right? But we did inhabit the land and to take care of it. So we were tricked out of that and tricked into working and living the American dream. Black or white. This is not about color. This is not about the colors, black or white. Didn't Michael Jackson say that in that song? It's black, it's white. Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, some of these songs that we thought were entertainment were really subliminal messages, right? It don't matter if you're black or white. That was Michael Jackson's way of educating us and sharing the knowledge, right? Erykah Badu's song, On and On. Most intellects do not believe in God, but they fear us just the same. None of that stuff was a coincidence. It wasn't just entertainment. These were subliminal messages. But we just saw them as entertainment. Even the movie Enemy of the State. What year did that movie come out? And they were telling us, he was saying that, oh, all the cameras and surveillance and blah, blah, blah. I knew once I saw that movie, I said, oh, that's the next thing they're about to start doing. And what do you know? What do we have now in 2020? That was like in the 90s. By that time, I had already gone to film school, so I had already started looking at things from a different perspective. And we've been told over the years that everything that comes on TV or that's in a movie has a bit of truth in it. These aren't made up stories. They're based on reality, whether it says so or not. Even The Matrix, even Avatar. As I was watching Avatar, I was like, wow, that's us. That's our story. But they changed the color to blue. The blue people. The giant blue people. Well, then when you see those pyramids, they had giant steps, right? I wonder why. And so who may have been some of the people that were given smallpox blankets? How many species no longer exist that they never told us about in the history books in school? How come they can't figure out how the pyramids were built? Here in the United States, so in the United States they call them mounds, and they let grass grow over them. And you hardly ever hear them talk about the writings and carvings in the caves across the United States. They always talk about the ones in Egypt, though. And why do we have an Egyptology? I forgot who said that. One of the professors in Hidden Colors. There's no Americology. No, Americology. There's no Europeology. There's no Japanology. What are they hiding? Richard Pryor did that skit where he was in his cave and he said, oh shit, this is black people. This book is about black people. And Professor Kamakaman said that was them closing out and blacking out the information that they didn't want us to know. And then they always say, if you don't want black people to know something, put it in the book. And some of the books where this knowledge is stored, these books cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars because they don't want the information to be known. So first of all, it's in a book, and then the book costs $200. How many people gonna buy that book? Instead of a pair of Jordans. I'm just asking a question. And again, we were all given the same wrong information in school, regardless of your nationality, where your parents came from, or what your status or class is in this country. We all had to unlearn and relearn everything because, like I said, at one point we were side by side as indentured servants. Until certain ancestors were told, oh no, because you're this color, you're better than those people. And we'll give you privileges. We'll even give your immigrant ancestors certain privileges. Sure, some of them worked for it. But if they worked for it on the land that they were given for free, some of that work they didn't have to do. I'm just saying. As Iyanla Van Zant would say, let's call a spade or a thing a thing. Let's not lie to ourselves or to each other. So we were doing well. They were in a Great Depression. They saw how well we were doing. They came and burned everything down. And again said, you can come work for us. Then they had the president and Martin Luther King shake hands. So then most African, what were considered Negroes at that time, went from being Republicans to Democrats, which is the Poor People's Party, which gives you the Section 8 and the food stamps and tells you the women can have a place to stay, but you can't have no man in the house, to keep us divided. So that we won't work together, because together we're powerful. United we stand. So now we're hypersexual in general, watch a bunch of porn, look at each other lustfully. Some men don't see the benefit of women. Some women don't see the benefit of men. And all of this has become normalized. And the abnormal has become normal. And most people don't see a damn thing wrong with any of it. Then you have people who brag about being married and they both cheat on each other and do each other dirty. And they not building nothing. And then after a while they end up divorced. This is what society has become in general. Not everybody, of course not. Not everybody has that mentality, but a large majority do. Again, I've been saying some of these things, and this is not coming from a perspective of bragging, but it's very disheartening and frustrating when you're trying to tell somebody something and they just insist on telling you that you're wrong without even attempting to do any of the research themselves. And put those pieces of the puzzle together. Look at all the different bits of information that we've been told. From the entertainers to the Martin Luther Kings to the Malcolm X's to the different doctors, the naturopathic doctors that no longer exist. Add up all the information from all the different sources. I hope that this was helpful. I love y'all. I promise you I do. And I just want us all to do better. This is not to make anybody feel bad or look bad. And we've all been lied to. We all have to unlearn and relearn. But it's not about you as an individual. It's about us as a collective. United we stand. One love, one heart. Love y'all. Later.